Hey there, Rednecks, Preppies, Redneck Preppies. It's me, the Redneck Preppy. How you doing today? Great, good. It's everyone's favorite kind of video, the book review. Yay! Today we're looking at the recently released Pistols of the Warlords, Chinese Domestic Handguns, 1911 to 1949, by none other than Ian McCollum of Forgotten Weapons fame. Now, as with previous headstamp publishing efforts, this one was the result of a fruitful Kickstarter campaign, one of the most successful in that website's history. There were several versions of the book offered. The one that I have is the purple cover with deliberate misspellings and typographical errors, which mimics the printing on many Chinese pistols of the period, and it was signed by Ian himself. You can still buy the standard version of the book at Headstamp's website, and there is a link in the description below. Now, onto the book. As the name suggests, Pistols of the Warlords chronicles domestic Chinese handgun production between the years of 1911, which saw a revolution which ended the Qing dynasty and the creation of the Republic of China, and 1949, the year that Mao proclaimed the Communist People's Republic of China. Between those 2 years, China was in the grip of what was known as the Warlord era, where what were essentially regional governors controlled fiefdoms with private armies and battled each other for supremacy, sometimes politically, sometimes through war. Now, warlords can't fight wars without firearms, so the country saw large numbers shipped into China from the West and domestic copies of those firearms. Handguns were one thing that the Chinese copied both in professional arsenals and at the artisan level. And it is these handguns that McCollum examines in this book. Now, before we dive too deep into Pistols of the Warlords, it's important to remember that as most firearms were essentially made by anonymous craftsmen of varying skill levels, we don't have a lot of documentation and information about the pistols. So if you're expecting reference level information about the individual handguns, I'm going to warn you right now, you're going to be a bit disappointed. But it is a reference work, so in service to the subject matter, McCollum does divide the pistols in some broad categories, including those copied or based on Mauser's famed C96 and Browning's FN 1900, as well as a raft of other lesser-known European designs, including FN models 1903 and 1910, and the Star Model A. Unsurprisingly, perhaps, given the artisan nature of these copies, very few of them featured anything close to parts interchangeability or even functional sights for the most part. The quality varies from impressive to life-threatening if they were actually used, even when that pistol was brand new. Although McCollum is the author of the work, I would offer much praise for the work of James Rupley, the book's photographer. There is scarcely a page which doesn't feature gorgeous and high-quality photography, and readers can thank him for that. As you can see by my paging through Pistols of the Warlord, you won't walk away with at least an aesthetic appreciation, if that's the word you can use for some of these examples, of the subject matter. Now, earlier I said that we don't have much in the way of documentation when it comes to who created any particular pistol or when the work was done. But McCollum has done a fair amount of work to tease out as much information as possible. By comparing the features a Chinese pistol has, or at least aesthetically apes, to known European pistols of that era, it can often be roughly dated, though with nothing approaching precision. Most of the symbols and text stamped, or sometimes engraved, on the pistols border on the ridiculous. There are plenty of pistols that have both Mauser and FN markings, for example, but on occasion it can be surmised that a handgun was used by, as an example, nationalist forces thanks to a particular mark. The level of imprecision that McCollum's narrative about these pistols might frustrate some readers, particularly those with an outsized interest in Chinese pistols of the era. But at the end of the day, you can only work with what you've got. It's unlikely that there are too many survivings of these pistols in private Chinese hands. The bulk of the pistols in the book seem to be from non-Chinese collections, and I'd be surprised if there was any documentation in China to glean more information from. It's quite possible that if you memorize the contents of Pistols of the Warlords, you'd pretty much know as much as there is to know on the subject. Rather, the strength of this book is McCollum's attempt to photograph as many unique examples as possible, draw upon as much information that exists, and speculate reasonably where it was necessary and categorize those results. I think he did a remarkable job in a subset of a field where one never actually knows how much or little information ultimately exists. It's possible that in 10 years we might know far more about these mystery pistols than we do today, but I don't think that would rob Pistols of the Warlords of its achievement of at least setting up a framework to hang that information onto, not to mention documenting what is known now. Pistols of the Warlords is an interesting book to try and categorize because it's at once a coffee table book, thanks to its wonderful photography by Rupley, but it's also a reference book. Given that with many Chinese pistols of the period that the book covers, we don't even know who manufactured them, where they are made, how many, or sometimes even when. And you can't hold it against McCollum for not offering reams of dry data like serial number ranges or the names of plant inspectors, or that information is scant about many models other than what they were copies of or inspired by. I should mention that thanks to the Kickstarter reaching some stretch goals, that McCollum did include some extra sections in the book, including profiles of some notable warlords and information about a few of the better known arsenals. To be honest, I wish he had more fleshed out some of this, particularly with more warlord profiles, but I do understand that at the end of the day, this is a book about pistols, not people. I would have also enjoyed learning more about the artisan process in making firearms, with perhaps some sort of look at modern examples like Khyber Pass copies, if only to get more into the mindset and the possible techniques of how a firearm is copied. As criticisms go, however, I think these are fairly light. The stars of Pistols of the Warlords are in fact the pistols, and over 500 pages of examples means you won't suffer for a lack of what you came for. I think this book is hugely entertaining on an aesthetic level, but also when one notes how many pistols of different manufacture all had the same serial number, misspelled roll marks, or a dizzying array of European proof marks. If you're willing to pay for the cost of the book, and at US $103, it's not cheap, and you're a gunny with a thirst for knowledge, I think you'll come away satisfied. So yes, this is a recommendation for Ian McCollum's Pistol of the Warlords. I think he hit out of the park with this book, and it should serve as a useful reference work for many years going forward, particularly if you're a collector in this niche field. At any rate, I hope you found today's video to be vaguely entertaining and marginally informative. As always, I hope whatever you end up taking to the range, that your groups are tight. Take care, and bye-bye.